Okay, so this is my second video journal for my APUSH history class, and it is on chapter 29 of the American Pageant, Wilsonian Progressivism at Home and Abroad, years 1912 to 1916. And the section that I was very intrigued by was titled Moralistic Diplomacy in Mexico. And this sparked my interest right off the bat because it used a term called moralistic diplomacy, something that I'm not really familiar with, and to be honest, seems kind of wrong to me because my father being having a father as a diplomat, usually diplomacy is based on much more concrete things than morals. Okay, so this section talked about the Tampico incident in Mexico, and it started off talking about how the government was overthrown and General Victoriano Huerta was put into power, and him gaining that position triggered a huge migration of Mexicans up north to the United States, and that this created a really unique mixed culture that is another example of the quote-unquote melting pot of the United States. And I just thought this was really interesting because clearly you still see its influences today. Watching Food Network all the time, you hear about Tex-Mex, and there are many other aspects besides food that have created, this kind of mixed culture down there. And then we also read about William Randolph Hearst, who owned a huge ranch there, and the size of Rhode Island, apparently. And to me, that was really interesting because that seemed very similar to the aristocratic way of life. So my thinking is that there was still part of that life that was down there, and it must have been really hard to, for the people there to be down there and see this aristocratic society still thriving, whereas it's just completely dead north of them, and they're probably, very sick of living in the past, so I can understand why this kind of incident would happen. And then I got a little frustrated as I kept on reading, because there was Wilson strove as best as he could to steer a moral compass in Mexico, end quote. And for me, this was rather irksome because this kind of seems like the same idea of white man's burden. Like, oh, it's the United States' job to instill a sense of morality into Mexican culture. And it's like, I already kind of know that this moral diplomacy isn't going to work because it's just not the right sort of attitude. And lo and behold, the issue isn't completely resolved. And what makes it end is the U.S. pulling out due to looming German forces. So it was just the most ineffective thing ever. And they disbanded some bandits, but it's in the end, nothing really was resolved. And it didn't even help the relationship between the United States and Mexico. It just kind of added to the stresses of the relationship, which, we can't take because, and then I connected that to the current widening of the Panama Canal so Chinese freight ships can get through. We spoke about this in class, and how we need good relations with Mexico in order to prosper economically from that widening of the canal, and to switch, the economic center to Central America and Northern America. It's like it was a really interesting section to read, but it was also very frustrating because knowing that these almost silly mistakes made by Wilson's his policies, his mishaps, will affect us in the future and are affecting us. So, but overall, I found this section really fascinating. So, that's my journal.